Sunday morning, 10 o'clock. Welcome to all of you who are chiming in this morning, and happy Palm Sunday to all of us who are Christians. My message today is going to be more Christological than it has been in the past, because it is Palm Sunday, and it's a day to historically celebrate Jesus' return to Jerusalem. But before I do that, I want to read a little bit of the Old Testament, which foresaw the coming of the Great One, the one who would restore Jerusalem. And I think we have to recognize that restoration, the concept of restoration, if you will, comes with a great deal of questioning and doubt and skepticism, right? So let's look at Zechariah, the prophet Zechariah, chapter 9, where Zechariah would write, "Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey." And then I'm going to read from Matthew. Now, remember, those of us who are Christians may not always know this story, but Jesus had been ministering to the people of Palestine for nearly 3 years, healing, helping, sharing love, compassion, trying to show people the way of God through miracles and stories that they could relate to, understanding that even if they didn't feel God was with them, that God came from the winds. God was there, always available, always present, always, as it were, there to lift people up out of their doldrums. And let's remember that things were not easy in those days. And relatively speaking, we kind of have it made, except for the fact that we're dealing with something bigger than life. And I think it's fair to say that people in Palestine that Jesus was ministering to, their challenges in life were way more severe. Life itself was no guarantee, period. And then to be occupied by a foreign nation was equally as challenging. Freedoms removed, liberties that could not be taken for granted, liberties that were taken could not be taken for advantage of. So to think that a man was coming, in this case a man, Jesus was coming with answers, was sort of the anticipation, the expectation. This great guy was coming into town and was going to relieve us of all of our burdens. So as they approached Jerusalem, Jesus and the disciples came to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives. And Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and at once you'll find a donkey tied there, with her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, say that the Lord needs them, and he will send them right away." This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. "Say to the daughter Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, on a foal of a donkey." The disciples went and did as Jesus had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. And the crowds that went ahead of him and those that followed, shouted, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven." And when Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred and asked, "Who is this?" And the crowds answered, "This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." I am focusing on this one little word, and I don't know the Aramaic for it, and I'm not exactly sure of the Hebrew either, but it's this word, stirred. The whole city was stirred. And I'm remembering that in my life, there was a moment where I was stirred, and it actually brought me to my knees. And I realized that my life, as I understood it, I was not alone, and I was being asked to do something more. I was a young man. I was 23. I was on vacation on the beaches of Nantucket, and I was struck by how I was called at that point in time in my life to go into ministry. And I was stirred, and I can still remember the beach, and I can still remember the skies, and I can still remember the waves that were crashing down on the beach. And I still remember being on my knees looking up saying, okay, 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 because I was so resistant. I'm like, I don't want to do this. It's like I was Jonah. I did not want to go to I didn't want to go to the city and speak for God. I had no interest in jumping into ministry and being in a pulpit and leading a congregation. I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is not my life. I was built for other things. I'm going to be a businessman, and I'm going to make money, and I'm going to have a family, and I'm going to do great things. And I mean, I just remember like all of that was arrested in one moment. It's like, Jonah was asked to go to Nineveh to preach to the people and tell them about God, and that they were all going to follow him. And he's like, not in your life. I'm not going to do this. So the doubt, the questioning, the the fear, right? The fear. I mean, and in some ways, good Lord, we're all being asked to go to Nineveh right now. We're all being asked to speak from our hearts and our minds and our souls. And it's not an easy thing to do right now. I mean, there's so many questions. I was just on the phone with a family member, and so that this feeling of just being totally powerless and out of control and not being able to understand how to move forward with any confidence and any certainty, it is an uncertain time. And I got to think, when the disciples heard that Jesus was going to go back to Jerusalem, I'm sure they were like, "Are you kidding? This is the hotbed of our religious life. You could be hurt there. People are not going to accept you." And lo and behold, lo and behold, the people were so warm and accepting, and it took a little time for that to change, like a week in the gospel. But initially, there was just this feeling of this being stirred that something great was about to happen. And the anticipation, of course, was that something revolutionary and transforming was going to happen on a political level, not necessarily on a human level. And of course, we know that, at least those of us who are Christians know that um, the transformation, the revolution that would take place would be an internal transformation. It would be a resurrection of heart, mind, and soul, which took the whole Christian movement to a whole nother level after Jesus would die. So it was about the love commandment and the giving up of oneself in order to love others, and to show that that was a means by which God demonstrates God's power and God's love and God's justice, if you will. So we are in a very critical moment in our lives, really, where we have a choice. We have a choice. We can either be extremely panicked and fearful about what's happening right now, or or we can throw our cloaks on the ground. We can grab the palms and put them on the ground, welcoming God back into our lives in a way we've never had to do before. I mean, we have never had to do this before. And think about how we have been able to live that. Um, we've been asked to be in isolation, all of us, but that doesn't mean we need to be lonely. Okay, and it doesn't mean we need to like not communicate, right? I've been on the phone a lot more in the last 3 weeks than I probably have been in my entire life, talking to friends, talking to family members, talking to former parishioners, talking to buddies who are really doing the best they can to kind of get through this fear and this panic with hope and with confidence and with faith that something good is going to come out of this, right? We can either respond with panic or we can either respond with faith. And I think that if there is a greater good at work in all of this, is that, man, we are coming together as a human species and recognizing the value of who we are and what we have and what we can do with our lives. What we can do with our lives. And I've used myself as an example of that. I could have stayed in my nice little quiet sort of kind of isolated world. I created my own little business and it was kind of moving right along. But I wasn't really kind of out there doing this kind of work. I wasn't even called to feel like I needed to. And boom, this thing happens. And suddenly the spirit within me, this stirring kind of came up. And I'm like, okay, get back to what you know how to do. Get back to helping people understand that maybe God works in these incredibly mysterious ways, and have some faith in that, and walk in some faith, and speak from my heart, and speak from my experience, and speak, which is what I'm doing now. And where it will go, I have no exact idea, and I'm just kind of letting God pull the strings here and move me as I'm feeling moved. So getting back to Jerusalem, Jesus knew what was going to happen. He walked in. People are excited. People are stirred. They're like, okay, tell us what to do. Show us the way. You've done all these great things for 3 years. Now you're at the pinnacle of our lives. You're in the city where it all happens. This is where our authority begins. This is where it's all happening. You are walking into the hotbed of decisions that can be made. Do it. Do it. And I'm sure deep down inside, he knew what they meant, and it wasn't going to play out the way they expected at all. And maybe that's what we're dealing with now. We don't know. We don't know how all this is going to play out. We don't know what is going to take place. We do know that things are looking pretty bleak. We do know that the human condition suggests that we have to try to stay in control. And I got to tell you, my experience with that is that we will suffer. We will suffer. So let's turn this around a bit and recognize that that may be the course of events for all of us, but we can rest assured that there is more to it than meets the eye. There is more to going to Jerusalem. There is a bigger accomplishment that is yet to be conceived, and it's all about connecting and being soulful and being mindful and being heartful and being stirred to know that we are called, all of us as divine human beings, to something bigger, something more faithful, something more extraordinary, which may mean connecting on a whole different level, and caring and having compassion for humanity in a way that we've been left, basically listless, and we don't really have to care about what's happening halfway across the world, and it's not going to affect us. Well, it sure is affecting us now. So how do we move forward? How do we move forward? Be stirred. Be stirred. Be stirred. It's okay. Stirred in a good way, and stirred with compassion, and stirred with the embers of growth that are happening all around us in so many ways. So it's about 13 minutes after. I wanna take some time for our meditation this morning. So again, connect with God on whatever level that is: Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, God of Christianity, Jesus, Yahweh, Shakti, Shiva, whatever it takes for you to center yourself. So open up your heart and your mind as we do a little meditation, and pretend for a moment that you were just in a completely quiet place overlooking a valley on a mountaintop. The sun is just beginning to rise, and the mists are rising from the forest. And all that you can feel right now is peace. Nature is reminding you that you're a part of something that is big. And there's nothing but a sense of calm and repose and and warmth and an intense sense that you are just one molecule among many, looking out at this scene. And breathe. Breathe in compassion right now for yourself and for those around you. I've heard in my own family system, another cousin of mine that ended up with this virus. And that's touched me in a way that she chose to take advantage of that moment and give people an understanding of what to do should it happen to any one of us. And it was helpful, as scary as it was, and she survived and she's going to be fine. But let's have compassion for those that are struggling, for those cities and towns that are suddenly realizing that they weren't socially distanced enough, and it's been hard and hurtful. Let's have compassion for all of those families right now who are dealing with the death of loved ones, who you can't anticipate the pain and the struggle of losing somebody to something they can barely control, and it's devastating. So let's be prayerful of those families. Let's open our hearts to them. Let's feel their pain, because it is about feeling. It is about sharing and having empathy for those that are having a hard time right now. But the pain isn't just around death. The pain is around the uncertainty. The pain isn't just about what's yet to remain to happen. The pain is around just not really knowing what to do and being out of sorts and out of alignment with our normal lives, and how difficult that is. So here we have to call upon God to be our resource, a very present help in trouble, is what the psalmist would say, because those things give us guidance. It gives us clear communication, a way to move forward in this life, and a way to find wisdom, and, as I said before, compassion, and a certain amount of joy, because it's hard to talk about joy in a time when we're so scared, but there are joys to perceive. There are good news stories out there. There are ways that people are jumping through the hoops to help other people, and that's what I tend to look at. What's the good that's happening here? It's I don't want to focus so much on the people freaking out, running out and hoarding toilet paper and guns, and what's the newest thing out there? There's something new that people are trying to hoard right now. I can't even remember it, but it's the hoarding mentality, the scarcity mentality, the fear mentality. I just cannot and will not contribute to that concept. I do feel that in our meditative spirit, let us focus on being caring and courteous and courageous and strong-minded. Strong-minded in a way that allows us to feel that we are conduits of grace. Not so much the monkey mind, which can sometimes take over our lives, but graceful ways to find gratitude and find power in how we appreciate and how we can be healing people ourselves. So just take a moment of silence, collect yourself, find the peace of God that passes all understanding, and let us be in prayer together. Oh God, help us to be stirred as a people, to welcome the God of our life and our lives into our hearts and our minds and our souls, to help us refrain from jumping on the bandwagon of fear, and to instead lead in faith. Faith that while we don't always know what's going to happen, we can take precautions to keep ourselves safe, but let us take time to do the things we can do, to do the next right thing in our lives, to be prayerful of others and to love one another and to be connected to people in ways we never have before. Perhaps that is the most beautiful thing that will come out of this, that we are a whole people of God, that all of us are involved, that all of us can be kind, that all of us can be caring, that all of us can look beyond our own selfish needs in order to care, at least if not physically, spiritually for one another. And grant that on this day of Palm Sunday, we can celebrate that God is walking back into our lives and that we can be stirred by your grace, stirred by your love, and stirred down to the bottom of our souls to be better people, more aware, and more in touch with how we connect to you, O God, and one another. Have a great Palm Sunday. Love you all. Thank you for being here. And find a way to love yourself today and love others. Thanks very much. Have a great day.